On this episode of Bryan the Guys, we pitch our ideas for the MCU's X-Men film. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Bryan the Guys. I hope you've been loving this X-Men talk we've been having these few months as we lead into Deadpool and Wolverine and the slow burn to the full MCU X-Men introduction. And that's our topic today. How would you introduce the X-Men to the MCU? Would you work with Beast already being established at the end of the Marvels? Would you just use previous teams for now? Like previous Fox team? Would you bring those back? Is this movie pre-Secret Wars when there would most likely be a reboot to the MCU of some sort in Secret Wars? You know, is this going to be post-Secret Wars? Whatever. There's so many questions, so many possibilities that we can go with this. So here at Bryan the Guys, I put my best people on it. Two other dudes that make a heck of a threesome with me. Please welcome the return of Jerae Finch and Tyler Patrick. My C-men. I mean, my Bryan men. My Bryan.
Well,
all right.
Finch, Tyler, welcome.
Thank you.
This is a very solid trio. Love this trio. So, I don't know about you guys. Oh, good.
No, I'm excited, but I'm gonna say like this for people like who don't know, like I love pitching movie ideas, and I do this all the time, and I even have a side YouTube podcast thing where I do this kind of thing on my own.
What's the name of that podcast? Go ahead.
It's a Requel podcast.
Go ahead and do your sales pitch there.
Look under Jonathan Tyler Patrick on YouTube, and that's right there. But this assignment was hard as hell. And we'll break it down more, but like
that's how I do things, buddy.
I was working on
making
things last night, and Jania was like, "What you working on?" I was like, "This dang homework from Bryan." She's like, "From who?" I'm like, "From Bryan." I'm like, "This is difficult because, you know, you look at the X-Men; they've already done like what 9+ films,
50.
somewhere in. Okay, 50. See, plus when you factor in Deadpool's and New Mutants and stuff.
Once upon Deadpool. Yep.
So you look at that, and then you look how they did like the X-Men, but then they kind of rebooted it with First Class. Then they kind of soft rebooted it like with Apocalypse. I'm like, wow, like there's so much story they tried to cover and recover, and I'm just like, okay, this is gonna be fun because it's gonna be difficult to do. So I look forward to hearing you guys' conversations.
This has been the one podcast idea that I came up with that I've been looking most forward to. Like, because I know how our creative minds work, and Finch thinks he doesn't have that creative juice. He talks down on himself about it, but I bet you
for sure.
Nah, you're good, man. You know, you too can have Scott Snyder teach you, and you too can go to film school. So
you too can slay it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you are slaying it. You got 3 kids?
Yes.
Yes. Yes. So anyway, I think this was the hardest podcast to prepare for. It was no easy task, but I gave you guys basically a what if scenario. I said, what if Kevin Feige gave you the keys to the kingdom to the X-Men MCU? I asked, what would your story be? Who's on your team? Who's your cast? And I'm just so excited to hear what you came up with. So let's friggin' go. So Finch, I always start with you because you're the best. So tell me your plot and cast. Tell me, you can give us scenes if you want, set the stage, however you want to present this. Sell us on the idea.
All right.
Good.
So mine's going to start in 1944. So I'm taking elements of, other movies and things like that. So for this, I don't have exact scenage or whatever, but basically what came to my mind was the scene in Inglourious Bastards where the dude
have my curiosity immediately.
The dude who damn,
Christoph Waltz.
Yeah,
Christoph
thank you.
Waltz?
Christoph Waltz when he comes in and there's so much tension building in that scene, right?
Oh, that's a
So
beautiful
I
scene.
love that. I love that scene.
If Christoph Waltz is your Magneto, you immediately probably might win this thing.
He's
But just
not, but
ah,
he might be in here.
maybe
So
he's my Magneto.
he might
Who
be in
knows?
here. So
Who knows?
um so I get like that's the scene that I'm going for kind of where the Jews are underneath the floorboards, like they see them coming down. So basically that's my scene of the opening where we are introduced to Magneto as a child. So basically his father gets shot and his mother gets, pulled out of there. He gets pulled out of there. We get a little glimpse similar to the first X-Men movie where he bends the fence, but it all happens like in a house instead of in the concentration camp. And then we're just gonna cut it off right there. Like it's the tension builds up. You get like he gets pulled out of there, and then so we just cut off right there.
So you
Then
cut
we
it to title card right there.
no, it's gonna cut to another scene
Okay.
in 1970 where we get Charles Xavier is a medical doctor in the military. This is where he meets Magneto or Eric Lenscher, and basically the scene that came to mind was just that intro piece of X-Men 97 where the two of them are like there's like a bunch of armed guards and stuff and they're standing there and they're both using their abilities to kind of like take them out. So let me see. Sorry. Okay. And then, so using his mind to stop the threat to his medical camp, Charles and Magneto both use their abilities to stop a bunch of enemies. And then a military general who we are introduced to as Trask, played
Mm,
by,
mm.
this is where my little bit of tie into the MCU possibly, because we don't know who he's actually playing yet, but Giancarlo Esposito. I have him as Trask
It's gonna play
because
Trask. Okay. Who is your Magneto and your Xavier?
well, at this point, they're young, so they're probably like digitally de-aged. But I have for Professor Xavier,
Or
I
did
have
you want to reveal that later? I'm so sorry.
no, it's fine. But they're digitally de-aged right here. I have Dean Norris he's Hank from Breaking Bad as not Magneto, Professor X,
Oh,
the DEA agent,
very
and then
interesting choice.
so my Magneto is actually Bryan Cranston. So, I
Oh, dude.
I went both of those guys playing opposite of each other
Wow.
again,
And so many
similar to
people
Breaking
think
Bad.
Bryan Cranston for Xavier, but you flipped the script.
Yeah, because I mean he plays a great bad guy in
He
Breaking
sure
Bad
does.
and
Ooh,
other stuff like that. So that's my Eric Lenscher and my
nice.
Professor X, and my Trask is Giancarlo Esposito because we don't know who he's actually playing in Captain America 4, but people are speculating based off that picture that he's got like a military background or something. So I'm leaning towards that. Basically, he comes in, he sees all the enemies on the ground, and he gets like scared and shocked, and he pulls a gun on Magneto and Charles, and Charles basically like kind of does like a mind wipe or something on him, and basically and then Charles and Magneto disappear. And then I cut to 1999. So we still haven't hit the title card yet. I got
Mm,
1999. And
mm.
basically, I got Zach Efron. He's running around and he lists a quote: "To be yourself in a world that is constantly trying to make you something else is the greatest accomplishment." Ralph Waldo Emerson. And then it zooms out and you see he's running like up on the ceiling, like around the danger room, and it's Zach Efron playing Beast. So I have Zach Efron as
Ooh.
Beast in his human form. So
Nice.
What's that quote again?
to be yourself in a world that is constantly trying to make you something else is the greatest accomplishment. Ralph
Oh, I
Waldo
love it.
Emerson.
Okay, that's great.
So
Finch, you downplay yourself in this, man, but that quote, that's a heavy quote. I'm loving it.
then we
Ba-da-da-da.
zoom out. Then we
Okay.
zoom out,
Zac
and
Efron's
he's
beast.
running.
Got
He's running. Like I say, he's in his human form, so he still has like the extra toes or the like feet looking grippy toes. He's just. I went with Zach Efron because if you've seen Iron Claw, dude is jacked, bro. So,
Me
um,
when Brian and I watched that movie, I looked at Brian and said, Zach Efron should be He-Man.
oh yes,
And Brian was
yes.
like, Oh my god, yes, but
Yes.
that didn't happen.
So
But keep moving on.
so my wife, sidebar, I apologize, sidebar.
No
My
worries.
wife, because I brought that up to my wife because she was like, she's like, I saw that you shared that they're making a He-Man movie, and you said like, why isn't Zach Efron playing him? And she's like, have you seen that Zach has got all this like plastic surgery in his face? And I said, well, I didn't think about that, but yeah, but in Iron Claw, like he's like He-Man. And she's
Yeah.
like, no, no, I'm telling you, that's why they went with this other guy because Zach's all like jacked up with whatever. I was like, no, that's not why.
Yeah, his
That's what
face is looking a little bit. The dude is ripped, man.
it is.
And then we get the X-Men title card. Boom. So right there, right? So then we cut to a government facility in Colorado, and I got Giancarlo Esposito as Trask and a scientist. They use a key card. They start going down an elevator. They go down to like a government facility bunker where we see they're working and building the Sentinels. So I'm already jumping in. We're building Sentinels. Hold on a second. Let me make sure. Okay. Yes. Sorry. We're building Sentinels, and Trask says, "Are we on schedule?" The scientist says, "Yes." As they walk by a couple Sentinels being built and worked on in a corridor, where we see test tubes and test subjects and things like that inside this government facility. Then we get to a door that reads M191963. No, wait. M191963. Yes. It's a cryo, and that is a Easter egg for Magneto's first appearance in X-Men #1 in 1963. People look for that stuff when they're watching
Mhm.
these movies. So you got to throw stuff like that in there. So I got cryogenically frozen Magneto inside of this room, right? And Trask says, "Begin thawing." And
Look
then
at you.
and then we
Look at
just
you. Keep going.
cut to, and then this is where I kind of didn't know what to do with some of these characters. So then when we cut to Scott and Jean, they're driving down the coast, and my Scott is played by Glenn Powell. I've been thinking Glenn Powell is Scott Summers for a long time now. And then I went I battled with this because I was gonna do the Hollywood thing and go with my Jean Grey. Since she's got the red hair, I was gonna recast her as a black woman. I, I felt I needed to do this, but then
I was hoping that you would go that route just to be funny.
so I do have
But
two names, and I could always do this or not. But I have Jessica Parker Kennedy, who is Nora from The Flash.
Mm.
I like her, and she's beautiful, and so I like her. Or I had Emmy Raver Lampman. She was the sister on Umbrella Academy. She was in Beekeeper.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I like her, but I ended up not going that route, and I decided to go with Alicia Debraham Carey from Fear the Walking Dead. She's the daughter on Fear the Walking Dead. No particular reason. Like I said, I don't know. I didn't want to go the exact Hollywood route of recasting a ginger as a black person. So, but I felt I needed to mention it. So basically, Scott and Jean are driving.
what's her name?
Alicia Debraham Carey
Deborah
from Fear the
Ham.
Walking Dead.
Okay. I'll find her.
So
I'm trying to see who she is.
she's just like a normal chick. I don't know, but I do like the other ones too. So I could, like I said, they're on there. I could swap them out or not. But so basically, they're driving. Scott thinks to himself, "This is our first date," and then Jean says out loud, "I know it took you long enough to ask me out." Scott chuckles. I hate when you do that." Jean apologizes. Right. So at this point in the movie, they are not married. They haven't been together for a long time. They've been working together. They've been students and everything for a long time, but this is the first time they're going out on a date. But they're older. They're not teenagers, but they're older because Glenn Powell's like 35 and the other chick's like 30. So they're like coworkers, but so then we cut back to the X Mansion. Bobby, Hank, and so as you can tell, some of the cast I'm going with majority OG team, original team. I've got my team so far is Cyclops, Jean Grey, Beast. We've got Iceman, who is played by Jack Dylan Glazer from Shazam. So he's younger kid, but he's funny. He has comedy chops and stuff like that. So I went with him, and I cast Kitty Pryde. And this one I did because I went with I'm not trying to be racial or anything, but I went with a white Jean Grey, so I had to have some diversity on the team. And we have Sky Jackson. She's a young black girl who, she's from Disney Channel, things like that. So I cast her as my Kitty Pryde. They're training in the danger room. Iceman's kind of getting whooped. He's getting whooped on by, they're not training against Sentinels because they don't know about Sentinels yet. But there's mechanical arms and lasers and guns and all that. They're training in danger room. Iceman's getting whooped on, and all of a sudden he goes full ice. And this is his first time going full ice. And Hank jumps past him, knocks, rips a thing off the wall. Kitty uses her, what do you call that? Her
Phasing.
phasing. There you go. Thank you. Phasing to pull a bunch of wires out of this mechanical arm, and then all of a sudden the whole room turns to ice, like snowstorm ice, and then all of a sudden Professor Xavier stops the training, saying, "Great job, everyone. Bobby, you've really improved, and you've gotten your powers more focused." And then Bobby says, "Thanks, Professor." All of a sudden we get a news report saying that the government has voted on the Mutant Registration Act, and the funds will be allocated to getting this bill funded and moved forward. Kitty says, "It's not fair. It's like Nazi Germany all over again." Hank says, "Let's hope not." Looking at Xavier, who flashes back to his first meeting with Magneto. Eric, who is a Holocaust survivor, but ponders whatever became of Magnus. So after their time together, they lost contact, and he doesn't know what happened to Magneto. But as we know from earlier in the movie, something happened, he got captured, and he was put on ice, basically. So
I don't mean to interrupt you, but who's playing Kitty Pryde?
Sky Jackson.
Sky Jackson. Okay, thank you, sir.
SKAI.
Wait, can I say something real funny, real quick?
Yes, sir.
Okay, did you guys see that yesterday they cast Ron Troop for Superman? And his name is Christopher MacDonald, MAC. And on IMDb, they have Christopher McDonald, as in Shooter McGavin, listed as Ron Troop.
Oh, this is for the Superman Legacy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I laughed so hard because even James Gunn was messaging at Deadline like, you have the wrong
not Shooter McGavin
name, spelling and everything, and actor it was pretty funny.
So we're back in the facility. Magneto coming out of his cryogenic trance and everything. He's thawed out. He wakes up in this room. He's in a weakened state. We get a completed Sentinel. He scans Magneto, who is still weakened, then says, "Mutant detected, objective confirmed," and starts blasting Magneto. After a few hits that look pretty painful, Eric grips the ground, looks at his arm, sees his branding numbers from the Holocaust, and with fire in his eyes, the room begins to shake. All the metal starts to gather in a large ball, and he flings it at the Sentinel, knocking the head off. Then Eric makes his escape. So I don't really have the details of how he escapes. I mean, he's ripping the area to shreds and everything like that. He escapes, alarms sound, and monitors in the bunker start to explode. On a screen, though, we get another little Easter egg where we see the Weapon X symbol in a file. And then we see a few other screen geolocations. One of them is upstate New York. So it's they kind of know where the X Mansion and stuff is. Then we cut back to, like I said, this is just those story beats and stuff to get through. Gina got her in a restaurant talking. They get notified from Xavier telepathically. It says Cerebro has detected an Omega level mutant out in Colorado and returned to the mansion. So they get back to the mansion. Cut to the government facility, or no, they're not at the facility. This is maybe Washington or whatever, or it's just somebody in the government, like a government official. He's talking about the Sentinels, how some of them have already been upgraded since the battle with Magneto, and then some have already apprehended mutants and taken them into custody. So they've already sent out Sentinels. The act has been passed. A couple of them been upgraded since their battle with Magneto, and then we get a suit up shot where the team is suiting up. So again, it's mostly the original team: Cyclops, Jean, Beast, Iceman, and Kitty Pryde. And
do you have an Angel?
No, I substituted her. I took
Kitty
Angel
Pryde.
out and put Kitty Pryde in there.
Okay. So is there any other cast members that you didn't get to yet?
maybe one.
Oh, okay. Keep going.
But he's not main. He's just like, yeah. So no, that's majority of the cast. Yes, obviously there's just scientists and stuff who can be cast, but
Yeah, yeah,
you
sure,
know,
sure, yeah.
no main cast. Team suits up. They head to the Midwest. Gene tracks Eric because he doesn't have his helmet because he's been locked up and he never got made or anything. So he's still vulnerable, but he's still Magneto. So he's still super powerful. It's just he doesn't have a way to block Charles or Gene or anybody. He and Charles, when they get there, they interact. Everything kind of seems peaceful, but you can tell he's still upset. Eric mentions humans will not be repeating the past as long as I live and breathe. They start to fight because Charles is, trying to convince him, like, oh, humans are not that bad, yada yada. Magneto, he's like, I don't know what triggers it, but they start fighting, right? And then all of a sudden the Sentinel comes, he takes out Professor X, like he shoots at him, knocks him out. This is where Scott gets a moment to shine. He devises a plan. I don't have a plan, but basically he uses leadership skills, gets them. Two more Sentinels arrive. Magneto takes one out completely, but then he gets berated by the other two and he gets knocked out. Iceman and Kitty work together. Basically, I have them like something that they did in the Danger Room working together kind of comes back. That's how movies work. They worked on a strategy. They come back together. They defeat one of them. Hank is over there trying to like reprogram one so they can track down where they originated and basically go back to. So he's like hacking into the system. And Gene and Scott, they fight the third one and take it down. And then they go and help Professor Xavier and Magneto. And then Hank is able to hack into the Sentinels and find the bunker. They go to infiltrate it. Basically, they go there, they find some file, pretty similar to Night of the Sentinels, the animated episode where they go to the facility and they try to like track down the files and all that stuff. And then this part is similar too, but they basically, before they blow up the facility completely, Hank gets captured. So Beast is captured. They return to the X Mansion. Magneto says, "We'll see what happens," and he takes off. Scott's pissed off, unlike in the animated series when it was Wolverine who was pissed off. It's Scott. He's mad that they couldn't save Hank and they had to leave him. Jean consoles him and says, "We'll rescue him. Leave it to the X-Men." Quote. Whatever. Professor is in the Cerebro. He's looking for Beast, and this is where we get a little cameos. I don't have anybody cast for them. It's just basically it would be Aurora. So we get a Storm, we get Wolverine, Nightcrawler, and Colossus, like little cameos, doing the Cerebro thing where you kind of see them somewhere out there. And basically that's kind of where I leave the movie. But then I do a little post credit here. So I got a post credit scene. We see Hank strung up and tortured, like he's being held captive, right? In walks Trask, and he's talking to him. And all of a sudden we hear a voice mention something about evolution and secondary mutations. And then he injects Beast and gives him like electrocutes him. Then we see Beast start to grow hair and turn blue. So at the end in the post credit, he's going from his human form to his Beast form, and the man laughs. Then Trask says, "Thank you, Dr. X6," and walks out. And that's where my post credit is. So, and if you want, because you mentioned it, and I do think he would be a great Nathaniel Essex, we can put Christopher Waltz as Mr. Essex. I think that would be actually pretty good. So that is mine, guys. Let me know what you think.
Hmm.
I like it. I feel like I can't really comment on it too much because I feel like then I start talking about, oh, this would be, but no, I like,
Well, like I said, this is like a first, this is just
yeah,
me throwing some stuff, and I didn't have
100%.
key points and stuff, but that's kind of where I'm looking at, and there is a little bit of a connection to the MCU if certain things play out, but kind of that's just how I wanted it. I wanted some diversity in the cast. I didn't want to be, like, oh, immediately we jump to Blue Beast. I liked that Nathaniel Essex is the one messing with him a little bit. And, obviously I know you guys are, like I said, more creative and you guys can work on, actual like, oh, this is exactly how this plays out and da da da. But that's just mine. Like you guys both mentioned, this was a hard task and this is what I threw together. So thanks for listening, guys.
It's cool. It works.
I I like I like that you froze Magneto. I thought that was a
Thank
pretty
you.
cool touch because it'll give longevity to that character a little bit.
It's
And
because I think Magneto, like I've heard people mention changing his origin to kind of modernizing it, maybe like having it be, the Afghanistan war, stuff like that, if you're gonna play it today. But I think him being a Holocaust survivor is his origin. And it's like if you change that, you kind of take away a little bit of him, like everything about Magneto.
The sympathy that we have for him as well. We talked about that in our ranking of what makes him such a good character.
Yes.
It's like removing Captain America from World War II. Like we just have to have him
yeah,
frozen for longer periods of time now because that's so crucial to the ideology of who he is.
Yeah.
nope, you're absolutely right. I like that you use Sentinels. I like that you use a good bit of the original team. I love Kitty Pryde. I I think I well, except for Days in Future Past, like she had a decent set, but I think that Kitty Pryde hasn't lived up to her full potential into live action. I think that they kind of didn't know what to do with her totally, and then they're like, let's do Days of Future Past. Oh wait, she's a big part of that story in the comics, so let's just put her in there. Yeah, I really like Kitty being a part of the team. So
Yeah.
yeah, go for it.
Well, thank you. I look forward to you guys'.
All right, Tyler, what you got, my man, Mister Filmmaker?
All right. So, like I said, like this was tough because I didn't want to repeat story beats. I feel that we got through almost the three different iterations we've got. Like I said, we had the original X-Men trilogy, then kind of the reboot with First Class, and then again a little bit of a soft reboot when they went into like the Apocalypse film. And there's a lot they cover, and I mean, through all these movies, there's a lot of mutants they cover and stuff. So I really had to sit with this, but here we go. My film's title: The Uncanny X-Men.
My man.
Director is Brad Bird because I feel like he's been in director jail. And Brad Bird, director, ever since he did Tomorrowland, it's like he just kind of got. But I loved Iron Giant, and I thought he did a really great job with Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. I think he has a good sensibility. I'm trying to think about like tonality that the MCU projects and what his sensibility is. My setting is modern day, and it's separate from the Earth 616 MCU. So like, most everything of the MCU is 616, and then we have like these pockets. Like this is a completely different reality separate from that, and it's post Secret Wars. So whatever they want to do in Secret Wars with the X-Men is fine. Like this is a clean slate reboot. My themes are the idea of accepting oneself, coming of age, and just kind of coming out and being able to stand for who you are and what you are in front of people. And the idea is I really want this film to represent the allegories and to really be a metaphor for our current political, geopolitical climate and the things that are going on in the world that are going right now. My influence for this film are Stand By Me, the Power Ranger reboot, and like Captain America 2 with like the political thriller elements, because that's going to play a big part in this. Because I really want to go, I feel like with the MCU where they would reboot it, they would take it more cosmic or more big or more playful. I really want to go serious with it. I try to go back to like what Stan Lee's initial thoughts and ideas were when he planted this and how he was speaking to racism. And I want to speak to just cultural and what it is. First rule: there will be no Wolverine. Okay. None. So, and since this is a clean slate, we don't need a cameo or anything, but Hugh Jackman's amazing. The character is amazing, but let's save that for, its own thing or whatever. Here is my cast. I'm going to leave a couple names off and you'll hear why. Professor Xavier. I went with one of my favorite actors. I went with Mark Strong because I think he can play so many different ways. He can be a menacing villain. He can be like your best friend. I think he's a great, talented actor, and I just love everything he brings. So now, one thing that with my X-Men team is what I hit on is I want this to be a coming of age story. So all my X-Men are teenagers, young adults, and part of the arc of this story is them stepping into losing that childness and becoming adults as it goes, stepping into something and growing. So I have Cyclops, I have Tanner Buckingham from Cobra Kai. I have Havoc, Alexander Summers, played by Jack Champion. He was one of the killers on Scream 6. He's also an Avatar. My Iceman is played by Jacob Tremblay, or Tremblay, however you pronounce his name. I have Psylocke, played by Paris Berelek, and I'll put all these names in the chat in a little bit. I have Angel, played by Finn Wolfhard. I have Nathaniel Essex, played by John Hamm, because I love John
My
Hamm.
man.
I have Magneto. I will not tell you who's playing it because ever since Bryan said this, I have not been able to get this out of my head, and I don't want to take his thunder if this is who he cast as Magneto. So I'm just going to say I have Magneto, and I'll wait.
No, you can go ahead.
You sure?
Yeah, you can go ahead.
It's Jason Isaacs.
Okay.
Because ever since you said that, I can't stop thinking about it. I even said it to Jania, and she was like, oh, that's good. So give shout out to Bryan for that one.
No problem.
I have Kane Marco, played by Richard Armitage. And then I know this person's already been in the MCU, but I don't care. My president character is Idris Elba. Because, recently we watched Pacific Rim again with the kids, and I love him in that movie. And that energy as Stacker is what I want as my president. Okay. So my opening scene is, so I'm gonna say this. My main protagonist is Scott Summers. He's kind of leading this movie because I want it to be through the events of the film is how he basically creates the X-Men team. It's through a lot of his behaviors and his relationship with Charles, and he kind of spawns what becomes the team. But the opening scene is Professor Xavier coming to an orphanage where he takes, moves whatever, the brothers Summers. He gets Scott and Alexander, and they're his first two students, and they come back to the X Mansion with him. Then that's our opening scene. And then the second scene's, a few years later. They're, late teen for Alex, early adulthood for Scott, and they're running missions on their own. And they're kind of doing this Underground Railroad-esque thing where they're sneaking out mutants. They have people they connect with and getting them back to Xavier's, where he runs a school, and it's not as prominent. He's had it for a little while. It is a school for mutants. But the idea is the second scene is the brothers are rescuing Psylocke. They rescue Psylocke and they bring her back. Angel and Iceman are already there at the school. And what we see is mutation in this story is a result of humans' behaviors. So it's not an evolutionary thing. It comes from nuclear testing, genetic modifications, issues with medicines that have changed our brain chemistry, foods we eat, just the world that we have created this mutation in ourselves. And the story is about the idea that this is the dawn of when mutants are actually becoming massive public knowledge. We now have evidence and proof that this is happening, though there's been, a few mutants through time that have kind of emerged. What we're seeing is this is the moment where they're getting the spotlight, and the world is in a state of fear, and you have a lot of geopolitical news, and the government has issued mandatory mutant registration. And we'll have scenes of people being at the doctor's offices for checkups that are now being scanned and tested for mutation there in the office by equipment provided by Essex Industries or Essex Labs. And we're seeing hate groups form. We're seeing these people that are mutant hunters down. And you have a very world and country, because we're kind of trying to keep it related to us, that's very divided by the idea that there's these mutant people out there and what's going on. Nathaniel Essex works with the movement to reveal mutants, but secretly he has his own agenda. He's trying to discover the mutants, and he works with the government and everything to bring this crisis known. We see Sentinel that gets launched is actually a mutant reporting app that everyone has on their phone that you can actually detect mutants with it and report if you have a mutant sighting. But what happens is that has an algorithm that creates an AI that is kind of like master mold, that eventually by the end in our climax, we actually get the robot policemen sentinels that are on the streets and start to actually create chaos because they're attacking mutants, but they're hurting other people. And there's no, judgment. They're machines that are just acting on impulse. So there's no accountability. So that's part of my climax. There's a political smear, and you have Charles representing this side talking about what is mutation. These are just people that have changed. You have Magneto as being this voice too, this country leader, because he's already kind of started a colony that's like Genosha and everything, but he hasn't come out as a mutant yet. And through the story, through the Sentinels attacking all over the world, Magneto reveals himself to be a mutant. But he's not the villain. He is a antagonist that is moving around the chessboard in the story. He has not become the force that we will know. That'll be saved for later. But you have basically Scott stepping in as like the poster boy leader of the students at the teams, because they see what's going on and they know, well, we know how to control our powers. We've been learning how to use this. We can go and help these people. We have to help these people. These people are us. And Xavier's more hesitant about them revealing themselves. And there's like, this is our choice. We can make the choice if we want people to know who and what we are and what we stand for. And we're going to show them that we aren't what they say we are. So Scott and his brother lead the students that are there. So that's how the X team is born. And we see this drama with like the president trying to hold the country together, but it's starting to split and divide. And you see this. But during the climax of the story, Psylocke dies and Angel die. They both die. And that weighs heavy on Scott and Alex. And Alex ends up leaving the school. And Alex and Scott, split. Where they've been like this together this whole time. Alex wants to go and do his own thing and goes off to start, which will eventually become like X Factor. But Scott stays. And during the like final scenes, we have a knock at the door, and there's a girl at the door who's like, I heard this is a safe place for mutants. I'm Jean Grey. And it's played by McKenna Grace. And she's there now as a new student who joins. And Xavier makes the decision to kind of come out too, in a sense, and let people know like he's pro mutant, he is a mutant, and he wants to be a political head as a mutant, not just someone for mutation. There will be a comment basically that there'll be a conversation between Cyclops and Professor X where he'll be like, we need to find another way to find the mutants before the government does. So we're alluding to Cerebro. So we haven't created Cerebro yet, but we allude to it. And then, based on a comment from Bryan, I went ahead and I wrote my post-credit scene. My post-credit scene is Nathaniel X in his lab. We see him collecting these samples of the mutations that are being taken when people are being identified with his tech. And we see him injecting himself and messing with it. And we start to see him become Mr. Sinister. And in the background, there's like a kind of body on a table kind of thing, like kind of moving. And we don't know what that is. And that's my pitch for Uncanny X-Men.
This is about to get pretty humorous as I go into my pitch.
Yeah.
As you'll see.
Did you go with Essex as a post credit also?
No,
Okay.
I didn't.
I was gonna say that seems like a theme right here. I like that.
Well, my biggest goals was I didn't want to try to redo too many mutants. Like I really want to do Storm, but I was like, no, I want to bring Storm in and give her her own big story arc, and start like if I were to do a sequel, it would be kind of like this teen goddess that's been elevated by her people. So like I didn't want to do Storm because I didn't want to redo what's already been done too much. We've had 2 different night crawlers, we've had 2 Storms. Technically, we've had 2 Angels on stuff like. But I used Angel because I wanted him to die, because I wanted there to be stakes. And everybody loves the Stranger Thing kids. But the idea is if he's dead, that could lay way later for him to be resurrected by Apocalypse, if we went that far down the pipeline. But I really wanted to bring it back to allegories for outcasts, for people of color, of people of different races, of sexualities and everything, and really represent and kind of touch that, the world we live in now and how people feel, and use these characters like, they were meant to be.
I like it. I like Paris. What is it, Bellic? I
Yeah.
like her as a Psylocke because I thought about having Psylocke as my substitution instead of Kitty, and she would be a great Psylocke. I like her.
I like I said, I wanted younger actors because I wanted the idea like these are kids who are making the choice to step out and grow, taking that story back, and making it about the next generation, like rising up to meet, the like, it's the same concept of who leads protests, right? A lot of time it's college kids, those young adults who are growing into something, who are, moving towards it's like, the stagnant adults, or whatever. So I wanted that to reflect in my X-Men.
No, I like that, and I also like the Sentinel as an app. Like I like that.
I thought that
Really
was cool.
like
Like I was
I
sitting there, I was
love
like,
that idea. Love it.
because I was like,
Love
I'll
it.
sit, I'll sit there
We're
and move.
thinking Terminator Genesis.
Well, not
I was
really, but
thinking
yeah.
Monarch, like how they developed the
Yeah.
app in Monarch.
And I mean, I'm just thinking like modern technology and what we do. I mean, there's what is it, neighborhood or whatever you can download? Like you can, share your neighborhood. So if you see suspicious things, you can report it in your neighborhood and
If you
stuff.
see some, say some.
So
Yeah,
like we're
there's
we're
like
always
Ring
talking about
Camera
like how would
app.
you be.
And, yeah,
Yeah, like we always have everything on our phone to monitor. So I'm like, what if you had an app like I saw a mutant, or like you could like go up and like, it has like a thing that like I was thinking about, like with COVID, we had the thermometers to, the infrared guns and thermometers. Like you could kind of hit someone and like, oh, their temperature's higher. They might be a mutant because we all know mutants, have a higher body temperature. Just, bullcrap stuff that gets passed on that becomes facts that just cause fear and chaos.
yeah. Just like Secret Wars or not Secret Wars, Secret Invasion was a very horrible show, but at the end, what they did where it's like they created like mass hysteria and people started attacking people they think were scrolls and things like that. How the president, I could see that like the app generating chaos like that and invasion of privacy and all this stuff that could be, yeah, I like that. And I like Idris as the president. The funny thing when you mentioned that, I was just talking with somebody about Pacific Rim the other day, and I was like, my favorite scene in that movie, as much as there's a bunch of other stuff I love, is his speech when he,
Oh yeah.
and yeah. So it's just funny you mentioned him as a president. I was like, I love that.
I love his energy in that scene. And I'm like, I was sitting there thinking like, who are like great, not too old, commanding African American actors. And I'm like, well, I don't like Mahershala Ali is supposed to be Blade. You know what I'm saying? And, technically
If it ever
Heimdall,
happens,
yeah, if ever Heimdall's dead, but I've always loved Idris Elba and everything. So I was like, dude, he would be my president right there, straight up. So, but yeah, that's what I got. I like the idea of just that dynamic of like just being this where you feel the tension of like the world and you're uncertain with who you are, and like no, I know who I am, and I have to stand for it in this world. So, all right, bro, guy, lay it on us.
I really like where you guys' head is at with things. So, Tyler, you are my Earth 2. We are very like minded in things. And Finch, we are pretty like minded too. And as you guys will see in a second. Damn you, Tyler. Like some of your casting, yeah, I put on my casting and I thought that everybody would be like, whoa, I didn't think of that. But then Tyler thought of it.
Damn,
Bastard.
I'm sorry. And I want to share, like, we did not talk. I refused to
We
tell
did not
Bryan
talk at all.
anything. The only thing Bryan asked me is if I was doing a post credit scene. Originally, I was like, no. But then I was like, you know what? I'm going to do this tease more sinister. But I refused to talk more about it because I didn't want to. Because Bryan and I have had these conversations off and on lightly. Like,
Jason Isaacs is the only thing that we talked about before we put this together. That's
I
it.
mean, yeah,
That's it.
we also, I mean, we've talked about how would we do the MCU and like theories and stuff, but we never like said definitively we break it down. So,
No. So
I've
this
been
is
excited.
going to get really interesting in a second.
Let's-
So I would also like to say that Marvel or anybody that decides to copy our ideas, we will sue you. These are original ideas that come from Jerae Finch and Jonathan Tyler Patrick and Bryan Cody Peters. Yes, I said my middle name, but these are our original ideas that we worked hard on. So we will sue your ass. Just saying.
Hey, just give me a writer's credit. That's okay. Just kidding.
Yeah, just give
You
us
could
money.
take my just give me like Finn said, give me a writer's credit, hook me up with an agent, and let me just keep pursuing this. Okay, like I will, like my dream job honestly would be to do this where I just pitch and correct people and like help them like shepherd like, oh, you should do this story, let's fix this, or like a screen, a script writer
Tyler,
who
that's
just
both our dream job.
yeah,
Absolutely.
like
Like a
Tyler and
consultant,
I just want to be in a room, just
like a writer
new
consultant
ideas.
or something, right?
yeah, like the
Absolutely.
ones they hire, like, okay, well, we need you to punch up this script or fix like a script doctor. Like, yeah, heck yeah, let's do this. All right, bro.
That's really all we want. All we really want is to do that. That's what we want. I'll write my comics. Tyler, you direct your movies, and we'll collaborate till we die. That's all we really want. And then I want Finch there.
I want to
Just
be a voice actor.
to be there you go. Previously on X-Men. All right, you boys ready? Here we go. I worked really hard on this one because
Do it.
I came up with ideas, and then I was like, okay, is that going to work? And I'm just going to go through it. Okay, so I am aware that there is a beast that is basically straight from X-Men animated series that is in the MCU right now, and he looks fantastic. I am completely ignoring that. My X-Men will take place after Secret War because just thinking exactly like Tyler, I want to start fresh with it. You can use whatever X-Men crap you want in the Secret Wars. You can do whatever the hell you want. Don't care. But post Secret Wars, we're starting fresh. We're starting new, and they're going to be in their own universe in my MCU idea. They're their own thing. Yes, I know Secret Wars kind of merges everything into one, but not this world. They're going to be their own thing. That's just way because in order for X-Men to work, in my opinion, they have to be their own thing. They have to be a little separate, and we can bring them in. Tyler and I have talked about this so much. They can come into the current day at any time, and I might actually. Okay, I want 3 movies in their own thing, and then maybe we can move them into modern time. I want them to have their own trilogy because I have a story arc I want to do, which I'm going to get to after my ramble. Okay, so here we go. Whew, so excited. Okay, Bryan's X-Men film. My X-Men movie is going to take place in an alternate universe set in the 1960s. This will possibly be in the same universe as the Fantastic Four. I'm not sure yet because I don't know where they're going with that. So, if they're going to pull the Fantastic Four through a time jump and bring them into modern day, since the Fantastic Four takes place before Secret Wars, then more power to them. But I need to keep my X-Men in the 60s just to start them out. Okay. So the film opens up with the date August 28th, 1963, which is the date that Martin Luther King gave his I Have a Dream speech. Martin Luther King is going to be played by Aldous Hodge. I thought about bringing back Jeffrey Wright, but I need an actor. So what was very important to me to put this movie together is I have actors at the ages they need to be at this time. I put a lot of research into that, and Alice is about our age, about 30. Like I think he's like 38 or whatever, 39. So that was important. So Martin Luther King Jr., played by Alice Hodge, will pan out of this speech, and we see Charles Xavier standing in the crowd, listening to the speech next to Eric Lensher. And Eric Lensher is going to be played by Jason Isaacs because that's who needs to be Magneto. Sorry. My backup is Ralph Fiennes. That's my backup. So we can switch it so I don't copy off you, but whatever. My Professor X. I did consider Keanu Reeves as Professor X because he's lovable and this would be a challenge for him as an actor. But I wanted a very strong actor here that looks like Charles, and much like the casting of Patrick Stewart almost 25 years ago. So I chose Mark Strong as my Professor X. So and Tyler and I did not talk about this, but I really consider Keanu Reeves. And casting the love interest, I even thought about Keanu Reeves and who's he's worked with before. but I went with Mark Strong because I need somebody that can play a scary villain because Professor X does that sometimes. I needed someone that had real acting chops, gravitas, and someone I needed someone like that. So, and they're all also about 60 years old, which is what I wanted my Professor X and my Magneto to be roughly about late 50s, early 60s. So, anywho, so there's a nice good reunion because they were together in the movie Good in 2008 with Viggo Mortensen. So, which in a future movie I might put Viggo Mortensen as Omega Red, but that's something separate. So anyway, MLK speech. I have a dream. Charles is smiling. He's inspired by this speech. And Eric and Charles walk away together and they get in the car and they start talking more. Eric says, I don't need your powers to know what you're thinking. It won't work. The world just needs better teachers, Charles says to Eric. Eric says, who gave you the authority to be the voice for mutants? And Charles says, no, Martin Luther King authority. He became the voice because someone has to be that voice, Eric. Someone has to believe that we can work together, that we can be united. I had that same dream. Blacks, whites, Native Americans, Asian Americans, men, women, and now mutants. We can all live together. You aren't the Messiah, Charles. You aren't the one. I put that in there because I was going to have Keanu Reeves. I wanted that little, that little moment. But maybe we are the ones, Eric. So I wanted this where Eric doesn't think that people can work together, not even him and Charles, but Charles pushing towards that. We can do this. You and I, Eric, not me alone, not you alone. We together as brothers. And Eric says, you think this school can change people's minds? You aren't saving anyone. We, Eric, we can save them. Maybe not this generation, but at least maybe we can save the next generation. Eric says people won't change. They always find someone and something to fear, to hate, to attack. If the world knew that there were not just Jews and blacks, but mutants in this world, and if people knew that people don't just get powers from accidents or a super soldier serum, we would have a war on our hands. And in a war, you need soldiers, Charles, not students. It won't work. And we must remain hidden, Charles, and keep others hidden. Or we start building our own army ready to defend once the humans attack. And mark my words, they will attack, Charles. And we have to protect those people. So Eric reminds Charles that this is his dream, isn't it? And Charles says, this is only part of the dream. We have to coexist. And that starts with helping Black people in the civil rights. We could not help the Jews. We were too young, Eric, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry what happened to your people. But we can help Blacks and we can help mutants. So the heart of X-Men is racism and discrimination and not accepting things are different. And like Finch mentioned, there's been a lot of talk that they would change the origins of Magneto and possibly make him and Charles Black. So I kind of wanted to use that in this story and really focus on this being a story of civil rights. So that's why I wanted to keep it in the 60s. And I wanted to have Martin Luther King Jr. be a character in this story and kind of work with Charles to kind of create the idea of X-Men and try to create this idea of working together. So that's where my head's at here. And then Charles says, Eric, I would think you above all people would not want another war. And Charles and Eric says, war is inevitable, Charles. Charles says, you are wrong, old friend. You're wrong. We can prevent war. And Eric says, we will see who in the end is right. Going to the Magneto's right thing. So as they're arguing, Charles is driving. And by the way, he can walk here. So he's in the audience. and they get lost because they're arguing. They're not paying attention. They don't have GPS at this time, that stuff. So Charles says he doesn't know the neighborhood that they're in, and he thinks he missed a turn as they were talking and arguing. Eric says, "We're definitely not near the hotel. We're in the wrong area," as he sees what looks like some white supremacists chase black kids into an alley. Eric says, "Stay in the car, Charles. I will handle it." Charles says, "I can help." Eric says, "This isn't something talking, Charles, and all you want to do is talk." Eric goes into the alley and yells at the white supremacists to stop and leave the kids alone. They have guns and they have a blinking device. Eric is not afraid. They yell at these kids, the supremacists do, and says that they're chasing abominations, the worst of the worst. They simply do not deserve to live, and they are dangerous. This scene is mirroring the X-Men story God Loves, Man Kills, to put in your perspective if you ever read that. Eric says it seems the supremacists are the ones who are dangerous and don't deserve to live. Charles is reading the minds as this is going on, and suddenly Charles's powers get cut off. Charles gets up out of the car and he races towards Eric. The white supremacists at this time fire at Magneto. Well, Eric at the time. He fires at Eric. Eric tries to stop the bullets, but he realizes that his powers are gone, and he rolls out of the way. And as Charles moves around into the alley, he gets shot in the stomach. The shooters get away, and the kids run away too, grateful. And Eric holds his friend in his arms as sirens arrive. Scene fades. A few weeks later, we'll show on the screen. We cut to Xavier in the hospital. He wakes up from a coma and sees Eric there. Charles turns to Eric and says, "Hello, old friend." Mirroring X-Men stuff, Eric runs to get the doctors, and he comes in with the doctors and Charles's nurse, Amelia. So when I cast Keanu Reeves as Amelia Vaught, I was going to go with originally Dina Meyer because they worked together with Johnny Mnemonic, and I needed a redhead. But I decided to instead cast Julianne Moore because she's around that age. She's a redhead. She's, serious actress. I wanted to have the love interest of Charles here, and I wanted her to be a great actress that could kind of be our eyes into this world as things are changing. So Julianne Moore is Amelia Vaught, who is Nurse of Xavier when he got shot. So she can also turn into dust. She was featured in X-Men 97 briefly and in the 92 cartoon. And she has different viewpoints of how mutants should be. And she eventually leaves Xavier when he creates the X-Men. So that's going to be a side story here. So yeah, for me, casting was very key in this movie because I want this movie to be taken serious. So yeah. So Eric asks over and over again, "Why didn't you just stay in the car, Charles? Why couldn't you stay in the car?" Like, Eric is totally devastated by the fact that he couldn't stop these bullets, that Charles is hurt. Like, he's devastated. Like, why couldn't you stay in the car? The doctors say to Charles how wonderful it is that you're awake. We have to tell you something though. And Charles asks, "How long have I been out?" And they're like, "Oh, it's only been about a couple weeks. It's mid-September now. And there's something we have to tell you, Charles. On the news is the report of the bombing of the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama." Charles asks him to be quiet and turn up the news. Charles sees this news and is devastated and says, "I have to do something. This is getting too far. People are dying. Blacks are dying. Whites are dying. People are dying. We have to do something." So he tries to get out of the bed and he falls. The doctors run to help him, and Eric helps Charles up, but he turns to the doctors in rage. "What is wrong with him?" Eric yells. Charles cries, "I can't feel my legs. I can't feel my legs. I can't feel my legs." The doctors say, "That's what we're trying to tell you, Charles. The bullet hit your spine in an irreparable way. You'll never walk again." Eric pushes them out the door and uses his powers to slam the door. Charles speaks to Eric telepathically. "It's not your fault, Eric. They had some kind of power nullifier, which tells me those children were mutants. They wanted to make sure that those kids couldn't fight them back. Eric asks how tech like that exists. Charles does not know, but says they gotta find this out. This means someone knows about mutants and they have built an army. He fights with Charles about what they should do about this. Charles says, I'm going to start my school. I'm going to finish Cerebro. I'm going to find out who is doing this, and we'll find mutants together and teach them to love others and control their abilities and make sure that this stuff can stop happening, that people can stop dying. Eric loses it and says out loud, your peaceful and hippie ways and marches, they don't work anymore, Charles. Your Martin Luther King ways, they ain't going to work. Look at what they did to Malcolm X. Look at what they did to you. Look at what they did to me and my family, Charles. Charles says, you still have family. You have your kids, Eric. Go to your kids. Teach them the way. Your way is wrong, Charles. The Martin Luther King way of peace doesn't work. It doesn't work with blacks, and it's not going to work with mutants. Eric, please, war is not the answer. Come build this school with me. We can teach them the way. Eric says, nah, I'm going to do my own thing. I'll be with my brothers and sisters preparing for war. We will find out who knows about us, who is trying to stop our powers, who is killing our kind. Charles says, but Eric, evil cannot defeat evil. Evil only prevails if good men do nothing, Charles. Eric walks out of the room and turns to Charles, walks out of the room and goes and says, and you're barely a man anymore, Charles. You can't even walk. It's time for Homo Superior. It's time for screen goes black, title card, the X-Men. Boom.
That'd be like 30 minutes into your movie.
Yes. Yeah. So I was obsessed with making this movie tied to history because I thought that was such a good thing. So like I try to think, what if Xavier, well, I was like, okay, when did the X-Men start? And it was September 1963. And I was like, when did Martin Luther King Jr. give a speech? And it was August 1963. So I was like, okay, if Xavier is based on Martin Luther King Jr. and Magneto is based on Malcolm X, then we need to make, well, I need to make whatever, but I need to make Martin Luther King be the catalyst to Xavier started thinking differently and what he can do. I actually started to write this as Xavier got shot while Malcolm X was assassinated, that they were there. And I was trying to think, like, how can I make Charles be there? And I didn't want to mess with history too much and kind of like ruin like what really happens. So that's why I kind of put him in the crowd there. But I couldn't make it work with the death of Malcolm X and have it make sense. And then the death of Martin Luther King Jr. was too late. So that's why I kind of put it there. And that's why I add in the story that God kills God loves, man kills part, because in that comic, white supremacists that work for Stryker are hunting down black kids. It's supposed to mirror the racism. Like you think that they're going to be killed because they're black, but they're really being killed because they're mutants. So I wanted to repeat that scene because it was just really powerful. So yeah. So the first half of the movie, after that title credits, which I thought was pretty cool. Like, you're not even a man anymore, you're X-Man. First half of the movie is Xavier recruiting his first students with Amelia. And Cerebro is not made yet. It's just, he's still kind of working on it. But he's trying to recruit his first students with Amelia, and they'll start dating, and he starts building the school. And Charles reveals he's a mutant. She reveals she's a mutant. That draws them closer together. Our X-Men team is Ty Tennant, who is David Tennant's son, who played in Tolkien and House of Dragons. Ty Tennant is going to be my angel. Gaten Matarazzo from Stranger Things, good old Dustin, Stranger Things, here we go, is going to play Beast.
As soon as you named him, I was like, he better be Beast.
Well, like-minded. So if you haven't guessed, I went with the original team. So yeah, Gayton is going to be my beast. It was very important to start young so that we can grow with these characters and have them a long time. So this won't be the X-Men lineup forever. This is where we're starting. We're starting with the originals. So Gayton, sorry for butchering your name, dude, as Beast. Sean Guillembrone, I probably butchered his last name. He played Adam on the Goldbergs, is going to be Iceman. So Breck Basinger, Stargirl, is going to be my Marvel girl, Jean Grey. And I can't believe this happened. I thought I had it up my sleeve. Tanner Buchanan is my Cyclops.
That's pretty freaking awesome.
I can't believe that happened. Like, I wasn't surprised about Mark Strong at all, but I was really surprised that you chose this too. I thought Tanner he shows leadership. He's young. He just has this like dick thing about him that I could work with. I even consider the kid that plays Georgie a Cyclops, but I thought Tanner had that dick mode on him, and sometimes you just gotta go into dick mode. So, and I thought he could be a great Cyclops. So, the basis of my movie is, I think we kind of were all thinking this too, is Night of the Sentinels. Sentinels hadn't been used in movies for over 10 years at this time. This is going to be probably more towards 30 years when this movie comes out. More, whatever. We'll start filming it now because kids are young. but it's going to be Night of the Sentinels meets God Loves, Man Kills, and very focused on the civil rights movement. So I played it somewhat safe with this movie. I will admit. And I mix the past with the greatest hits of the X-Men, the things that really worked well in the past. But I really want to get to the heart of the X-Men story. So the end of the first act is going to be the assassination of JFK. And that is where Magneto reveals mutants to the world. And to save JFK, it's going to look like he kills him, because I really like that part of the story in Days of Future Past. But Magneto is going to be there because he hears that there's going to be a hit on the president. He tries to stop the bullet, but they have these power nullifiers again, and he bends the bullet and doesn't get to save him. And that's what, JFK dies. Magneto goes to prison. Magneto's off the shelf, because I really like that story. So the end of Act 1, mutants are revealed. So yes, and enter our villains, because the mutant war is about to begin. So villains, we need a rich guy telling the world how to handle the revealing of mutants, because in the world today, these are the people that tell us how to think. So I wanted a rich guy in there saying, this is the way you need to be, like an Elon Musk type whatever guy. So I have Eric Roberts as Warren Worthington Jr., and he's going to be the money behind. And Eric Roberts plays a great sleazeball. So Warren Worthington Jr. as Eric Roberts. So we need a politician. This politician is kind of going to be like, it's almost going to be the battle for this guy's soul a little bit in this story. And I have Gary Cole, Mr. Reese Bobby, Bill Lumberg as Senator Robert Kelly. I think he kind of comes right off the page right there. And we need someone to be a military guy in this story. So I have Kiefer Sutherland as Henry Peter Gyrick. We need a scientist to suggest how to handle this. I have Joe Morton. Yes, Joe Morton from Terminator 2, the guy who created Skynet and the Terminators, as Bolivar Trask.
So he's just going to create every, cyborg. Like, he creates Cyborg, he creates the Terminator, he's going to create Sentinels. Makes sense. I'm game.
If you're good at something, never do it for free. And if you're really good at something, do it 3 times and get paid.
Yeah.
So I thought you guys would like that. We need a master mold. I really want Master Mold in this. So I have Nicholas Briggs, and he is the voice of the Daleks for Doctor Who. So exterminate. That's going to be the voice of Master Mold. And then we need a mastermind behind this whole thing, but not the character mastermind. We need an evil mastermind that is the Palpatine of it all, that's pulling all the strings, that is the puppet master. And that is going to be Reverend William Stryker as my main villain. And he's going to be played by Tom Hanks. So while MLK is preaching his dreams and Charles is sharing that dream, I want to have Stryker there opposing that dream. So I want this to be a political thing, a religious thing. How do we think? How do we treat people of different races in different ways? I want this whole movie to be a battle for the soul with the X-Men in the middle. Stryker is going to be a Mormon preacher because the Mormons were very kind of popular in the 60s, and the Mormons also believe that black people are evil. Well, at least they sure did back then. And he wants to stop the civil rights movement. He wants to stop the rise of mutants. He wants to wipe out all who are different, and they're blinding America and leading them away the thinking of the 50s. Exactly. If you're a Mormon, listen to this. Okay. Anyway, I did say that. Okay. Sorry, brain fog. Yeah, no offense to the Mormon. I'm so sorry. But in the 60s, they weren't thinking very well. So Stryker is going to be the anti Martin Luther King Jr. And Stryker is the one that orchestrated the death of JFK. And he's the one that let Magneto know about the attempt on his life. He manipulated Worthington to finance him and Trask and to make the Sentinels. He put everybody in power, blah, blah, blah. So when JFK gets killed, he uses that to push the idea of the Sentinel program. So he manipulates the government to create Mutant Registration Act as well. And he has them spying on mutants all this time. He has been spying on mutants and put this together when his wife gave birth to a mutant. I don't know if you ever read God Loves and Man Kills, but in that story, it's revealed that his wife gave birth on the side of the road, like in the desert. And the baby was like an abomination mutant, like disgusting mutant. And he killed that baby, and then he snapped his wife's neck right on the side of the road. And then he decided to be a preacher. He felt it was a sign from God to end abomination. So Tom Hanks is going to be like, this is going to be crazy. So when JFK gets killed, Xavier knows that they can't be students anymore, that his kids have to be soldiers. So they're going to put on the iconic blue and yellow suit. And this is where we're getting into it. So we get Sentinels hunting down mutants nationwide, civil rights stuff, Martin Luther King Jr. and Xavier working together to try to be as peaceful as possible. But now we have a war brewing, blah, blah, blah. Awesome fight scenes, whatever. Act 3 is going to be the reveal of Master Mold, and Stryker is behind it all. And his kid was a mutant and whatever. I want Stryker to be kind of like a Palpatine meets Mr. Glass. So he has been orchestrating things and events to kind of test mutants. So he's the one that did that Baptist church bombing. He's the one that orchestrated that. He's orchestrated all these civil rights attacks to try to reveal mutants and push them out to see where they are. The final battle is basically going to be Stryker puts his mind in Master Mold to be this ultimate destroyer. The X-Men team just can't seem to stop this guy. Meanwhile, during this third act, we see Magneto in prison, and the Blob breaks Magneto out of prison. The Blob is going to be played by Seth Rogen, and the CGI. I just felt that was the best choice. Like,
That makes sense.
It's just. I think he'll do a great job.
Yeah.
During the big fight, the X-Men do not defeat Master Mold. There's a big battle, and they're working together, but they just can't do it. And Magneto is the one who stops the Sentinels with his powers, and he's the one that stops Master Mold with the Blob. The Blob sits on Stryker and kills him. The weight of mutant kind literally kills Stryker. I thought that was cool. Charles yells at Eric on how he can do that. Eric says he is now Magneto, and he creates his Magneto costume, the helmet and all, out of the scrap of Master Mold. So he uses magnetic powers, which is, purple and pink and stuff, and he creates the helmet and he creates his whole outfit. I thought that would be pretty badass. You are leading mutants, Charles. You got to have your fun and you have your team in school, but those days are done, Charles. That ends now. Your dream ends now. There is no shared world. There is no us. There's only them and the Brotherhood. Join me, Charles. The team stands with Charles and they don't budge. The blob stands with Magneto. Magneto says, have it your way. He floats up in a force field with Blob. He turns back to Xavier and says, I will bring you hope, old friend. And I only ask one turn. Don't get in my way. Magneto does the fist thing and the look of X-Men the animated series, where the villains and everybody's about to run in together. Charles says, I will always be in your way, old friend, as he does the thing and says it telepathically. Yeah. So Charles says, I will always be in your way, old friend, and so will the closing title card, says the X-Men. The first post-credit scene is Cerebro being made as Charles is desperate to build this army, as Magneto is going to build an army. And we see cameos of future mutants and such. Second post-credit scene shows Martin Luther King Jr. in a hotel and gets sniped. We zoom out to the shooter saying it's done, and that shooter will transform into Mystique and her classic look. Mystique will be played by Ana de Armas. In the sequel, I'm going to have an all-out war between X-Men and the Brotherhood. The movie we've always wanted. Well, I've always wanted. I'm going to have Magneto, Charles, Beast. Magneto's lineup is going to be Magneto, of course. Toad is going to be played by Paul Dano. Quicksilver is going to be played by Tom Felton. Scarlet Witch, yeah, I know. Malfoy and Malfoys. I'm going to have Mastermind, Blob, Mystique, Avalanche, Pyro, and Juggernaut. I don't know who I'm going to cast as Juggernaut, but Juggernaut's going to be a key part of this second movie because we talk about the brotherhood between him and Magneto, Charles and Magneto, and Juggernaut being the stepbrother, and he's going to be kind of like a reveal midway through the movie as an extra threat. On the good guys, we're going to have Beast, Cyclops, Gambit, Jean Grey, Angel, Rogue, Storm, Iceman, and Shadowcat. Oh, I'm sorry. I might not have Shadow. Oh, yeah, I will have Shadowcat. Colossus, Wolverine, and Nightcrawler will come in the third film. I'm going to have Wolverine have his own solo film in between there. My third villain is going to be Mr. Sinister. So
You're just mapping out your own universe, man.
I really worked on that. So
Because that's what I would do. Like if we had to expand this, like because I'd set mine in a separate universe, I would make my own interconnected new X-Men universe where people are crossing over into like Wolverine has his own solo mission. It'd be more of a a Weapon X style movie. I'd have Gambit. I would do Gambit his own solo movie and build up that whole Southern thing, and then making
Field
them
of
connect
Thieves
and
movie.
cross over. Yeah, like I would do that to start to build up. So you're almost building a new MCU just off the back of the X-Men
it's exactly
before,
where
like
my
you
mind was
said,
going.
and then you have them cross over like through, whatever Loki was up to or whatever, So, but yeah, if we're gonna build a whole universe, let's do this. Because then, like I said, I set up my Havoc to go off and do his own X Factor, and start making his own
I
team.
love that. I really do. I really do. Yeah. So that's kind of where I had going. Like I wanted, I wanted to lead towards a brotherhood, civil rights stuff. The 70s is very, kind of black empowerment. So that's when I wanted to bring in Storm and bring in and the Storm is going to be a huge focus going into, and I'm going to slowly change this team and bring in the new people and kind of bring out whatever. Yeah, and that's kind of where I'm going with that. I thought it was really cool that we kind of we want to go with kind of the Sentinel route. I thought that was pretty fun as your first villain stuff, and I think that's probably drilled in our head, Night of the Sentinels, because this is the
I
first
think
time.
it's that
Intro, yeah.
it is that, and I think it's also just a looking at history of how do we fight back? Like what's the first thing we can do to fight back? And using Sentinels as a way of fighting back without getting your hands dirty. It's kind of like drone
Yep,
warfare.
Yep.
You know, like you're just sitting back controlling something. You're not actually doing it yourself. You can kind of take yourself out of the equation. Like, oh, I didn't hurt those people. It was just a byproduct of me controlling this, just like, you know, a car accident or something.
I think it also
And I,
shows that everything is, humans are always afraid of mutants. Like that's the underlying theme. Like it's always humanity versus the mutant race, Like we can get into mutant versus mutant eventually, but I feel
In
like
the second
it's
movie.
got it. Yeah, it's
yeah,
got to be human versus mutant first to establish
yeah.
why there's such hatred and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think we got some like really solid ideas here, boys. Like really, really. I got yeah. Finch, you impressed me, boy.
Thank
I
you.
say, I say you release this episode with a poll and let everyone online vote for which pitch they like the most.
Well, the answer is you guys, is because I I I went too deep in it. I went deep.
Hey, I like it.
No, I mean,
Man. It's
I
good.
think you wrote some great scenes. I just didn't know how, like, if you wanted just a pitch or if you wanted a full fleshed out like scenes, like, you
It's
know what I'm
okay.
saying?
I
Like,
just couldn't stop writing. I
so
couldn't. I couldn't
Yeah, I
stop.
mean, you got that Snyder 3-hour cut, you know.
I I I like your pitch, Bri. I do. I just my this isn't a negative to you. Okay, this is just a personal thing. I just don't always like messing with history. Like when I write and create stuff, like I don't like making like alternate histories. I never really like when I do that, even in comics. Like I always hate when characters are like, oh, this is when Superman interacted with JFK, or this is when this person met this person. I'm like, I just always like separating that. You know, it's a personal thing. Like even in other movies, I just never really like changing history that's not there unless it's something really bizarre like Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter, where like you're less like, okay, that's fair, but
See,
that's
I'm
just a
kind of the
personal thing.
opposite actually, because I like that kind of stuff, like what Loki did, where they made him DB Cooper, and they had them escape from Alcatraz, and what like Umbrella
Yeah, but
Academy did with
DB
the
Cooper
grassy
is cool.
knoll.
Like DB Cooper was cool because like it's far enough removed, no one really knows like about DB Cooper, like who he was, all that. So like that's kind of cool, but that's just like I said, that's a personal thing. That's just me. You can ask Jania. Like with a lot of stories, I don't like when they make like revisionist false histories and stuff. So that's just me. That's nothing against your pitch because I think you got a solid like building blocks there. So
Hey, it's comics.
yeah, I mean, like I said, it's just one of those things that I personally don't like. I don't, but that's just me.
I also like how we all, Magneto's there, but I think you both give him his costume like later in the movie, right?
Yeah,
And
Yeah.
I had him no costume at all either, no helmet, no costume. I don't know, it's weird. We all did that too a little bit. So
I like like I said, my biggest thing was not trying to repeat too many beats they had done before. You know, and that's why I kind of try to put Charles in the background a little bit. Like he's there, but he's not so much the upfront because like we had First Class, which was Magneto and Charles, and I like the idea of Magneto not being the villain out the gate, like letting them just like letting him be an antagonist, and like he builds to becoming the villain through the acts of the events of. So when you have your sequel, he is more of your villain. He is more of the opposing force. I wrestle with the idea of like I wanted my X-Men to be grounded as much as you can and not go cosmic or time travel and all that stuff.
Well, I think this is pretty dang. This is a pretty dang episode. I thought we had some pretty awesome ideas. So thank you, Finch.
yeah,
Thank you, Tyler.
thank you for having me.
You guys will?
Thank you, Tyler. And
Both are awesome.
thank you. And thank you, guys and listeners, for joining us. I was excited for this podcast, and I hope it will create lots of debate. I think it probably will. And even though we got a little, I got a little philosophical at the end. So you can find this episode and our X-Men episodes on YouTube, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and online at bryantheguys.altitude.com. And find us on Facebook, Insta, and TikTok at Bryan the Guys. And also relaunching in August is my flagship podcast, Gravely Amusing, which is a horror, sci-fi, and all things paranormal podcast where me and my cousin Steve are discussing the birth of sci-fi and pop culture, cryptids, ghost stories, unsolved mysteries, monsters, and aliens. And on July 8th, we're dropping our first episode back as we discuss the Roswell conspiracy. You can find Gravely Amusing on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, X, Instagram, TikTok, all at Gravely Amusing. And you can listen on our website at gravely.alitu.com. Finch, thank you so much, sir. This was
Thank you for having me.
always, man. Thank you so much. Tyler, it was a pleasure. Thank you again. And thank you, my Bryan man. And thank you, listeners. For when you need comic book knowledge, don't cry. Just listen to Bryan the Guys.